Thanks for being here. I know these are not easy times. And today we'll be talking about analyzing research capacity and competency. My name is Alba Clivati McIntyre, and I'm the director of the Strategic Intelligence and Mapping Unit at Ohio State. With me, I have Mathieu Cheba Karamoko, actually not with me because I'm in Worcester and Mathieu is in Columbus. But Mathieu is part of a critical part of our unit that is just the two of us. And I started on this role in 2012. And in 2016, Mathieu joined us, and he brings a valuable business acumen to our unit. Also joining us today are those two, Zoe and Lucy, and they may or may not voice their opinions during this meeting. We try to keep them quiet, but it's not always possible. Depend on the cats outside. Today, we're going to be talking about analyzing research capacity, more research capacity than competency. And just to give you a perspective, this presentation comes from a larger presentation that we were preparing. And when I say we, it's Karen Walker, Jamie Burns, and I were preparing for the NORDIP 2020 bootcamp. My session was to talk about research capacity, and I had many slides, and so I used those slides to build this presentation. So we'll just touch on topics like key concepts, customer engagement, defining the topic, data collection, data analysis, and issuing a report. If you have any questions, you can use the chat, or you can, at the end of the presentation, there will be time to answer those questions. So feel free to write on the chat if you want to. So I'm going to start with some key concepts, and I thought that was important to differentiate between capacity, the words that we use to define this kind of analysis, and that would be capacity, capability, competence. So I looked for what exactly those words mean in terms of evaluation. And I came up with a simple example. So when you're talking capacity, you're talking the ability that exists at the present moment to do a job, and it is quantifying something. Capability is the potential to elevate your capacity under the right conditions, that is. Competence is something a little bit of a deeper, more thorough knowledge and strengths and skills that are required to deliver a product. So one example that I use is I have the ability to run. I have the capacity to run 100 meters in 20 seconds. I have capability to improve that to 15 seconds. But I am ultimately incompetent to run for a race. I'm not competitive enough. So those three words sometimes are used interchangeably, but we wanted to make capacity as our critical portion for this presentation. When, if you go into federal sites, you hear a lot about building research capacity. And when they talk about building research capacity, and there are RFPs out there there's let me see, there's chat, let me see. Yes, you'll be able to get the slides. When you're looking at a federal aspect of research capacity, we are talking about faculty training, improving infrastructure, and that is not what we're talking about when we say research capacity in terms of competitive intelligence. I came up with this short concept here, or definition, this is my definition, and I haven't run this through other units like ASU's units to see if this is a good concept or not, or definition. So take it as is. How I define research capacity in this case is the ability to perform research supported by a significant body of scientists as it relates to a topic. When you're doing this research capacity, you're always looking at a topic. So do we have the scientists and they are inside that topic or not? So doing research capacity analysis does not analyze the competency to do that job well. It's just we can do the job. I wanted to put this side note here on what core competency is, because I initially, I was going to talk about core competency, but then I thought it was a concept that is too advanced, even for us that we have been doing this for many years. And still, it's hard to find what exactly is core competency. So core competency is a concept that you hear a lot in industry. And it's basically a combination of complementary skills and knowledge that gives you or the institution or the industry a sustainable competitive advantage. So that's why the objective of always having a competitive advantage, it's really hard to define and really hard to find out. And sometimes I can see institutions not having really a core competency. So core competency is something that I decided not to talk about in this meeting. It's very hard to define and very complex. So, continuing with key concepts. When exactly do we apply a research capacity analysis? I know that ASU's group apply a lot for federal funds. We here at OSU, we started this unit and doing research capacity analysis to engage with companies. The objective was to align our capacity with the company needs or interests. And since then, I think both groups, ASU and OSU, and I'm sorry if I'm not mentioning some other group that is also doing this, it's just that I am not familiar with. And I know that ASU and OSU do also apply this for institute and center implementation, for targeted investments. Every university has targeted investments or those big objectives of maybe food or health or something like that. Implementation of new academic majors. This happened here at OSU. We did some studies for a new academic major in esports. So go figure. So a strategic planning, any sort of a strategic planning from a departmental level to university level should include some research capacity analysis, and to identify future research directions and or collaboration opportunities. When we're talking about competitive intelligence, we're always thinking of beating the competition, but competitive intelligence is also being smart about who to collaborate with. So these are just some examples of where we've seen use of RCA, and I'm sure there are many more uses. So when we use this, basically what we are talking about here is whenever there is the need to be tactical or strategic. So why do we analyze research capacity? I think it's universities have survived for hundreds of years not doing any of these analysis. But the situation right now is such that it's a very competitive environment. And in this competitive environment, you need to understand what your strengths and weaknesses are. You need to uncover internal knowledge, and this is very important. I'll come back to this a little bit later. Maximize effort, increase return on investment, but ultimately you need to make informed decisions. I think upper administrations are making more and more informed decisions. They want to have that information to be able to quickly make decisions with less gut feeling, basically. So, and it is interesting that as you go in groups like mine or ours here at OSU and ASU, this is cumulative knowledge. Every time you do research capacity analysis, you are actually building your knowledge of the institution. And this is what I call building blocks for competency analysis. Ultimately, you're gonna know your institution better as you go. With years of doing this, you're gonna understand. What I said about here in terms of uncover internal knowledge is the fact that it happens always with us when we are dealing with industry, for example, that there is a need, so we go and we do a research capacity analysis in the university, and we always find people working in related areas that will add to the overall strength of the university. So this is pretty cool. Universities, high-intensity universities, research universities like OSU, ASU, University of Michigan, large ones, it's impossible to know everything that is going on. So uncovering this internal knowledge and the science going behind that, it's really important and it's really cool. Gosh, I'm having trouble here. So I would like to talk about, okay, we've determined that it's good to do a research capacity analysis. So now how do we engage with that customer that comes to us looking for such analysis? And you're gonna find all sorts of customers, right? From upper administrations to faculty. And they will come and engage with you in several ways. Some will just send an email and ask for an analysis and never more look at you and just expect a wonderful product later on. I advise against that. It's always good to interact with the customer one-on-one, live if possible, not just by email, and not at the current situation, it's impossible. But if we are in a normal situation, I recommend having a meeting with the customer and just talking about what the customer understands of the project, what their needs are. But normally they don't know what their needs are. They know what they want. So it's your job as an analyst to extract the needs from what the customer is telling you. Once you understand what the customer needs or in what he wants. In his mind is wants, in your mind is the need. You go over the main takeaways with the customers, because there's often, I find, there is misunderstanding or misinterpretation of what the person is talking about and what you are understanding, you as an analyst are understanding. And this is something we do here at OSU. I don't know if ASU does the same process. One, we try to meet with the customer. We discuss the topic, discuss what the project would look like, what his understanding, what the project would look like. And then we confirm that the outcomes of that meeting, the proposed timeline, the form of delivery by email, and ask for a confirmation if that all that is correct. And this is just a suggestion mainly from us here at OSU, because we find that customers change their minds often. And if you don't have a confirmation to go back to, you are in a losing end of this. And above all, manage the expectations of your customers and understand there are constraints. So in industry, there's what is called triple constraint, meaning that there are some factors that will affect the overall quality of that product. In our case, in this competitive intelligence function, I determine the triple constraint as if the scope is too broad, if the time is too short, and if there is no involvement of the customer, the customer has no right to expect a quality product. This is not gonna work. In terms, you're gonna be a failure. The analyst is gonna be a failure in this case. So manage that expectation. Have work with, if there is no time, just make the customer understand the product is gonna suffer. And always ask for feedback, always. These are normally not paid functions inside the university. So for you to make sure you have metrics and success, you have to have the feedback from your customers. Okay, so let's say you met with the customer and everything is okay. I normally, here at OSU, we take 1 or 2 days to finalize this initial contact with the customer and say, yes, we're gonna do this, we're gonna go and do this assessment for you. So you have to think at this point, what questions need answered? Can you answer these questions, and what type of data tool or database can you use? Meaning, can this be done? Don't commit to something that it cannot be done, because you are always gonna be the one delivering the product. And if you cannot deliver, you are in a losing end. That is not a success for you. So once you determine that, yes, I have everything I need, I know what to answer, I know how to answer, and I know what information will help me answer that. So then you proceed with your project. But then it comes the most difficult and crucial part of this, of research capacity analysis. And that is the defining the topic. So customers come to you with a request, and it's normally very broad. It is very hard to find a customer that comes to you with a request and a well-defined topic. So you need to define the topic, and that is, if you fail at this stage of defining the topic, what is going to happen is the customer is going to change his mind, her mind, And you're going to have to redo your assessment again, your analysis. So you're going to get to a point and you're going to go back and start doing it again. So that's why Karen and Jamie and I and Mathieu always think that this is crucial request. And if you spend more time thinking about the definition of the topic. So I'll give you an example. Let's say your customer comes to you and requests that you do research capacity analysis on sustainability. For one, I would recommend you run for the hills because sustainability is a buzzword and everybody is working on sustainability. Every university has a sustainability center of some sort, and it's everything. Sustainability is everything. And like sustainability, there are many topics out there that are too broad to analyze. So I did a simple exercise that is this figure here that you have on the right. And I went on EPA and I looked for the sustainability indexes that they have to assess sustainability. There were 252 indexes in 36 broad areas, and those here are the broad areas. So we actually ran into a problem like this. A request came to analyze the research capacity of for our Sustainability Institute. It is very hard. So at this point, when you're defining the topic, it takes a long time. You're gonna have to define this topic in agreement with the customer. And when I say defining the topic, you're gonna come out with keywords that will define that topic. And it cannot be one word like sustainability, but it cannot be 20 of those concepts because that's too large. We tend to be around 7 to 10 keywords that define areas. And that is a good number for us to analyze. I am not sure how the ASU group, how many keywords they can work with. But for us, that's an optimal number. We can, if the number of keywords start, it's above 10 or so, it takes a longer time to analyze that. So it can be done, but it's just the timeline gets to be extended. So how exactly are you going to define the topic? So this is a combination of the analyst defining a topic and searching and researching the topic and bouncing back to the customer, actually engaging with the customer to see, is this within the range of what you're thinking in terms of this topic? So for the analyst, I mean, you may have scientific knowledge in one area, but you're not gonna have scientific knowledge in all the areas, right? So you have to have an initial broad understanding of what that area is or what that area encompasses. And the way you do this, you look for definitions of that area. I always look for applications first. For example, sustainability. I went straight to EPA and look at the indexes of assessing or metrics for sustainability. So I always try to look at, okay, the topic is microelectronics. Who is using microelectronics? Or the topic is nanotechnology. What is nanotechnology being used for, or what science is behind nanotechnology? So it is, it comes with experience of analyzing that or quickly having a general idea of what the area is. So I start always with very generic sources, but trustworthy. So for example, government websites, or university websites, scientific reviews, I find it very useful. In societies, societies are excellent. If you have to do anything regarding, for example, engineering, electronics, electrical engineering, the Triple E Society has everything you can think of. And in this case, just be curious, because rarely one of those requests will come to you that is very well defined, is just one discipline. It's most likely to be multidisciplinary, and have many sciences that compose the base for that topic. So here I list some sources because I wanted to give emphasis on the internal databases. Internal databases are really the most important database that you can find. You have other advanced tools, but it's what you're doing right now that is important for you to find that competency, that research capacity. We worked a lot with awards and proposals, mostly with proposals. Analyzing the proposals gives you an idea of what is going on in the present. Of course, universities will have different proposal database, and some are better than others. Here at OSU, those two, the award database and the proposal database, are not very friendly. They're limited, but we still try to do the best we can with what we have. Some universities or states have excellent expert portals. I don't rely on those normally, but that is an excellent source for you guys. Patents and IP and tech, of course, if you're doing a volume of patents and tech transfer. Federal databases, we use a lot of star metrics. Some people know this star metrics by eReport, is the same thing, and USA spending. They have about every agency listed except DOD, it is, and DOE. Those two are not very easy to find the information from awards. The web, always do expert search and focus on the .govs and .edus, and avoid at all costs the .coms. Because, well, they're selling a product, so they're biased towards their product, and it is not information that you want to add in there, except in the case if you're working with industry. Then you look for the company's specific website. Now, we do a lot of publication analysis here at OSU. And there are some free tools like Publisher Parish, Google Scholar, Microsoft Academic. And most universities will have in their library system a subscription to Web of Science or Scopus, that are the two biggest publication databases. If you want more information on the difference of those two, I can give that information. We have some information available, but for OSU, we mostly use Web of Science, although we do have both Web of Science and Scopus available. And as you're evolving on this competitive intelligence function, eventually you want to have an advanced research analytics tool. There are several out there. The most famous is SciVal, that is a product of Elsevier. And I know ASU uses SciVal Here we use Insights. So those two are subscription based, of course, and it's very expensive. But we decided to use Insights. Insights is refers to Web of Science database, and SciVal refers to Scopus database. So they're products of the same company, Web of Science and Insights. If you want to also more information on Insights, we can give you that. That is no problem. So once you get all your you're doing this project, you define your topic. Hopefully you don't have any change of mind later on. You are now in the phase of gathering that data. So you gather the data and you start having this, in our case here, it's sort of overwhelming because you have a lot of data to answer specific questions. So the way we do this, and you can create your own process, of course, is we create a document, a working document, and we state the question and list the data, have the data source, the data type, the collection date, and analyze each question and what the results can be. So come up with some preliminary results. And as you're doing this exercise, you will come up with conclusions. Sometimes something will show up all of a sudden, you see a trend. So write that trend down, because that's important for your customer later on. That's what the customer wants to see. So make note of conclusions of what trends you're finding. Check for data discrepancies once you have most of the analysis done. As you go on, check for discrepancies. Mainly when you're looking at dollar amount of awards, of proposals, there are several ways you can convey that information. You can convey that information, for example, as expenditure. You can convey that information as award, or like we have here is an accounting tool. So an award, there's several awards for the same project because they come every year or every 6 months. So this kind of discrepancy, it can create confusion with the customer later on. So make sure you know what you are talking about. We always try to do total award of, for example, if we are doing award analysis or agency analysis, we do total award because it's easier. And we really do not understand the research expenditures because the numbers do not match at all. So make a note of those conclusions, check for data discrepancies, and for qualitative data or data that cannot be easily transformed, summarize in short sentences and make it bold or make it some way to call the attention of the customer to that specific information. So I'm going to give an example of a report we did for our College of Engineering. This is actually one of the buildings of the College of Engineering. And this report was requested by the research, the Dean of Research for this college, and it had an initial focus on smart infrastructure, vehicle to vehicle, infrastructure to vehicle, so navigation sensors. So those were the areas where the customer wanted to focus on. So there was a lot of analysis that went into that, and we had to finally tell the customer, hey, we can't analyze anything with 30 keywords. We need to have a better grasp of what you want analyzed. And she's a very, very nice person, so she understood that perfectly, and she came up with a list of keywords she wanted to focus on. With that list of keywords, what we decided to do was actually tell a story of research. So the context was she was meeting with this company that is a very large corporation, and she wanted to show what OSU was all about in terms of research and why this company should continue doing research with us. So we decided to do in a storybook, basically, of research. So we started that was easy to understand, that was easy for my customer to deliver that in the form of a presentation, and that had data supporting that information. There was a large amount of data supporting that information that the customer and the company never saw, but it was there in case somebody needed. So what you have here on the right is basically the table of contents of that report. So you can see that goes from OSU overview, then OSU research impact, sponsored research, and then he enters the College of Engineering research competencies. And we talk about high volume of publication, high impact research, collaborative research, how it evolved, how this research evolved, and how we secure research funds. And on that part, with the securing research funds, we divided into federal and industry because this is a company after all. So we want to show that we do well with industry. And the last piece here, the OSU COE competencies map, it was actually a live map that the customer could click and enhance certain parts of the map when she was talking about that specific competency. So these are some of the graphics that were in that report. So OSU overview, for example, is just very general information, and we rarely use ranking. But because it was very general and just an overview, and it had to be easy to understand, we used then some rankings that are available, but normally we don't use any rankings. Then, you know, College of Engineering overview. It started with this overview, and then we entered a more research focused portion of the report. The map indicates the publications for the College of Engineering in that specific area, because with those keywords that the customer gave us, it became an area, right, that we were focusing on. These are the countries we collaborate with on that specific area. And this is a network showing our publication, co-publication with institutions around the world. When we dove deeper into what the research is going on in that specific area, then we came up with a network that shows timeline superimposed. So we know that, for example, everything in dark blue, we worked earlier on, maybe in 2013, 2010, and everything that is more red or orange, it's more recent publications. So, for example, microgrids turned out to be one of the topics we are currently working on. And that fits right into what the customer needed. It was one of the keywords that the customer was trying to focus on. So you can do several things to demonstrate your research capacity and how it's evolving. Some other analysis of federal funding, and because this was an industry, we also did a breakdown of awards sponsored by industry. And fortunately for us, this college is very good at collaborating with industry. So it was easy and the numbers were good. But with the objective here was to tell the company, hey, we know how to collaborate with companies and we do this well. So I believe this is about the end of my slides, and I hope this gave you some information. And above all, in terms of doing research capacity analysis, always think that this data has to be unbiased and based on curated information. I think this is something we cannot not think about it. It has to be there. Any research, any capacity analysis that we're doing, or different analysis in terms of competitive intelligence, has to be unbiased. You have to know the truth. You can't sugarcoat what you don't have. And you have to deal with what the reality is in terms of university. And this is it for this presentation. I hope you gained a little bit of knowledge from this, and I hope it wasn't too boring. Do you guys have any questions?
Thanks, Alba. I think that was really good. There is a question in the chat from Juliana that asks, which software do you use to create your data visualizations?
Oh, okay. So, yeah, good question. So we use mostly Tableau. You guys can unmute yourselves, I believe. I don't think Zoom is having any trouble now. I will try to get people to see people here. Stop sharing. So we use mostly Tableau. Even if we use specific tools like Insights, for example, that has its own visualization. We normally don't like to use those visualizations. We like to download the data and do our own visualizations in Tableau. There's someone else in the chat. Anybody else? I am reading the chat from the question for Christine. Yeah, we always have problems with DoD and DOE. I'm not sure what the experience of ASU is with those two agencies, but DoD, our problem, I find it difficult to analyze DoD because they have a lot of contracts. They do a lot of contracts. And DOE doesn't have a unified database. Jamie and Karen, please help me here. I know you guys have more.
Yeah, I would agree, Alba. DOD is always sort of a quagmire. I mean, there's so many different agencies. So if you're looking at, you know, AFRL or the Naval Lab or whatever, trying to access information because they don't have a centralized database. Typically, we've pulled information from like press releases for awards, and then you know, put that together in our own Excel sheets to track things like the Muri, things like that, because there isn't a centralized database for us to pull from like there is with, excuse me, with like, you know, NIH, which, you know, is easy to go in and pull a lot of information from. So with DoD, it's sort of a crapshoot. And DOE used to be better, at least the Office of Science used to have a more robust database, but in recent years I've found that it doesn't always have all the information you're looking for. I don't know why they scaled back the information available, but it's a little more difficult to get things out of it. And even if you're using Federal Reporter, it's still difficult to access everything. So yeah, I'm in agreement with Alba, and I don't know if Jamie has anything to add to that, but I would say that those are two, especially DoD, if we get asked to go investigate DoD, it's a bit of a headache.
Right. Oh, there's a question from Ryan. Thanks, Ryan. Do you receive requests pertinent to development in humanities? If you do, how do you navigate the gaps in funding and publication data, private funding and monographs respectively? Okay, oh, so humanities is a problem. We do not have requests from humanities. However, last year, there was an overall research strategic planning at OSU. And one of the points was exactly how do we help humanities and with this kind of request? Because the publications that are important for humanities are not indexed by the databases that we currently have. So I met with the law school, I met with the dance department, and it was very hard to even get a good grasp on what is the output, how we gonna analyze this. So it's still evolving for us. For law school, what we found was many of what it's important for them, for the faculty, it's like when they show up in news articles or newspaper articles, and that is not indexed, and it's not in those advanced research analytics tools that we use. So no question that how we do things here at OSU works better for engineering, medicine, physics, the hard sciences. And I'm sorry, I don't know how to solve that, Ryan. I don't know, Karen, have you had any experience with humanities?
We've had some, and it's sort of the same situation you're in. I think one of the things that's evolved over the last few years is a greater awareness of metrics and the need for metrics within academics, and getting different units to self-define what their metrics are so that they have some way of measuring their own success or their own growth. There's been a lot more work at ASU with different units trying to help them figure out what are their metrics. I mean, it's easy within like engineering or the hard sciences for them to look at things like proposals and awards and other measurements that we standardly look at. But like you say, a lot of the humanities are not captured in awards or in even standard publication metrics. So having them say, well, these are the things that are important to us. And then we have to say, well, what are those resources we can go to find those things? So it's still a work in progress.
Right.
Because, it's not necessarily so easy for us to go out and find those things. But yeah, just getting them, I think now just getting people thinking about how are we going to measure ourselves? What are we, what are the important things that we're looking at? It's at least happening. Whereas I know maybe 10 years ago, that really wasn't in people's minds.
Right.
I'll add, we actually just kind of wrapped up a project where we did look at humanities, and it was a challenge in every way you and Karen just described. And one of the kind of big takeaways from it was, you know, talking to people, as you guys mentioned, talking to them and figuring out what's important to them, what matters to them. And then really with the data, we didn't have perfect data, and we were not going to have perfect data. So we had to look at what we had and really ask ourselves, could we provide something with this? And so one thing Karen always says that I really like is, can you provide perspective in the cases where you can't provide precision? So perspective over precision. And really with the humanities, the data, it's not currently there. And so it's really hard to provide exact precision. But by looking at the humanities from like all different angles that we did and talking to people all across campus, I think we could provide some perspective for them moving forward. So not necessarily the precision we can provide to like our engineering department, but where we can, we try to provide something.
Yes, Ryan, you mentioned alt metrics, and that's correct. We are aware of it, and we're a unit of 2 people, so we can't really expend too much or tackle humanities or law or any other college like this. So we want to. Last year, we did an analysis of the entire OSU in 250 areas of science. And it is interesting to see that on the humanities part, there's so many caveats to the data, and the interpretation has to be really, really careful. It is not the same as how you would interpret the data for engineering, any physics, and areas of medicine. So it starts to be dicey at that point when you put all these areas together, because the data for humanities and how to interpret that data is really difficult. But hopefully we'll get to work more on that, and there will be a better solution than right now. Any other questions? We are about at the top of the hour here.
I just want to say thanks for your presentation, Alba. I learned a lot. Fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for being here. I know it's not easy. I don't know. I think this lockdown is affecting me somehow. I'm a little off lately. I don't know if this is the effect of being home. It seems like I'm losing my bearings, it seems.
It was a great presentation, Alma. Thanks very much.
Thank you. I will I'll send them slides. There was a lot of pictures on this slide, so I'll clean up a little bit, and I'll send slides that are more text based to Jamie, and she can then share with you guys.
Yep, I'll send out your slides, and the recording will be posted as well.
All right.
Thanks again.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.